Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté. And good Monday morning, everybody.
Good Monday morning. How's it going?
It's great. And remember, go to usefulidiots.substack.com. And also remember, just in case you forgot, Donald Trump is not the president anymore, everybody. You might find that confusing because today, as we cover what the Sunday news shows are covering, it's pretty much all Trump all the time. But just FYI, he's currently a private citizen who's no longer the president. But for some reason, we have to talk about this guy constantly nonstop because now he's got, 3 cases? I've lost count. 3 different cases.
This one is pretty good, though. You guys, I kind of have changed my... Well, we'll get into it. We're going to get into it. But I think that a big issue is that when you focus on what he did, like electorally, that actually is quite criminal. I think the mistake that a lot of people have made is they've made it seem like it's, including the anti-Trump media and anti-Trump Democrats, they keep talking about the riot as if that's the big thing where he is criminal. I don't know. We'll get into it, but I feel like there's a lot of hyperbole about the actual riot on January 6th, but the actual nerdier stuff.
The insurrection.
Sorry, that's what, right. The insurrection, right.
Insurrection.
Yeah.
The QAnon shaman almost ruled the world.
Right. That's what I think there's more hyperbole over. Sorry, I haven't been sufficiently caffeinated, so that's why I didn't remember to call it an insurrection. But we'll get into it because I don't want to I don't want people to think I'm a lib. I still think the insurrection talk is hyperbolic. But having read the indictment, much of the indictment, it really is more about the fake electors. It's a little preview.
Well, hey, that's what we're talking about today because that's all the Sunday news shows talked about basically. So, but yeah. In the meantime, again, usefulidiots.substack.com, and I guess let's go to the Chuckster for the Chuckster. As we always start.
And if you're on Rumble,
good Sunday morning.
Usefulidiots.locals.com.
Good Sunday morning. Voters next fall may be faced with an unprecedented choice, whether to put former President Donald Trump back in the White House or to essentially sign off on his sentencing if he is convicted and send him to prison or a Secret Service protected home confinement.
Is there any way we could have an election choice that's not just about Donald Trump and his current fight with the Democratic Party? It's like, so basically that's the only decision we have to make, like whether or not to elect him or send him to prison. Can we have choices on some other issues? For example, like, I don't know, healthcare, the economy, Ukraine proxy war that's like destroying the world. Is there anything else?
Upward transfer of wealth.
Sure. Is there anything else we can get a say on, except for whether or not Trump goes to jail for the rest of his life? Because everything just is reduced to Trump. And I don't know. I think there's more to life than Trump.
Yeah. And of course, we should also remember that George Bush should have been indicted over something very serious.
I think every president should have been indicted over what Trump is currently indicted for, including Trump, who I think did much worse things than what he's currently being indicted for. But those presidential crimes, like, again, going to war illegally, going to war and killing people, those are never charged because that's normal. That's expected. In fact, that's encouraged.
That's part of being president, in fact, in this country.
The latest federal indictment accuses Trump of 3 conspiracies. One, to defraud the United States. Another, to deprive voters of a civil right to have their votes counted. And 2 counts of corruptly obstructing an official government proceeding, the certification of the Electoral College vote. The indictment details how Trump was told by his vice president, senior Justice Department leaders who he had appointed, the director of national intelligence who he had hired, senior White House lawyers who he had hired, his cybersecurity agency, senior campaign staffers, state legislators, many of whom endorsed him, and state and federal courts, and that there was no evidence of election fraud and that he had lost the election. Trump's campaign even paid 2 outside research firms to try to prove his electoral fraud claims. But they never released the findings because The firms disputed his theories, and they could not offer any proof that he had won. And Trump...
See, look, I think this case is stupid, and here's why. Yes, of course, Trump's fraud claims were baseless and dumb, but now you have to prove that he knew that they were false and knowingly went ahead and tried to defraud the government anyway. And I just think it's a hard thing to prove, even if it's true legally. How do you prove what was inside someone's head? And by contrast, Bush and Cheney were told that there was no that prisoners that they had in CIA custody weren't making any connection between Iraq and Al Qaeda. And what happened was those prisoners got tortured to say the right thing, and the intelligence was manipulated to say the right thing. There was no prosecution for that. And I think if you're going to try to prosecute a government official for lying, as Trump is basically being prosecuted for here, I think you should start with more important crimes than this one. If you're even going to test out that, tough legal theory of being able to prove that someone knew that they were spreading false claims.
This is going to be House divided, because I agree with your second point about the larger lies that were told by other presidents. But if you'll allow me to just quote the indictment. See, I think that this is a mistake. It's not really about proving that whether or not he knew he was wrong about the election results. It's about the fact that regardless of what he thought, he did things and encouraged things that were illegal. So there's some people later on in this stream who are going to make some analogies about that. But let me just quote one thing from this is count 11 from the indictment. Okay. The defendant and co-conspirators organized fraudulent slates of electors in 7 targeted states, attempting to mimic the procedures that the legitimate electors were supposed to follow under the Constitution and other federal and state laws. This included causing the fraudulent electors to meet on the day appointed by federal law in which legitimate electors were to gather and cast their votes, cast fraudulent votes for the defendant, and sign certificates falsely representing that they were legitimate electors. Some fraudulent electors were tricked into participating based on the understanding that their votes would be used only if the defendant succeeded in outcome determinative lawsuits within their state, which the defendants never did. And then the defendant and co-conspirators then caused these fraudulent electors to transmit their false certificates to vice president and other government officials to be counted at the certification proceedings on January 6th. So that's one thing. But I also think that juries can draw conclusions. It's up to the jury to determine whether or not they've proven what Trump knew.
But again, that raises the question. Yes, their claims and their aim was fraudulent because, I think the vote was not rigged.
Right.
But the question is there a distinction between these alternate electors were wrong, but they have the right to be put forward in whatever way they were, and they were part of a criminal conspiracy? Are those actions criminal? They may be wrong, but I don't know if all that's criminal.
Well, I think it's criminal because they weren't the electors because they didn't win those states. They didn't find the votes. He called that Secretary of State Raffensperger, whatever his name is, in Georgia.
I gotcha, but in 2016, Democrats tried to do their own version of that when they said that because Russia hacked the election, then electors should vote for Clinton and not Trump. And I believe, correct, I could be wrong on this. The scheme they put forward was something similar. So again,
but did they do it?
Well, they talked about doing it, and the question is,
if they had done it though, then they should have also been indicted.
And to me, I just wonder here, and this is for legal people to debate, which we're not, but is there a distinction here between they were wrong and they were wrong, but they had the legal right to test out their wrong theories?
No, they had their legal right to test them out, but they tried to do that and they were rebuffed.
Okay, well, hey, TBD.
TBD, yeah.
I think you raised an interesting point. And this is why you also watch these Idiots for top shelf legal analysis.
Exactly.
This is it right here. Yeah. Okay, back to the Chuckster.
All right, back to the Chuckster.
Alleged to have repeatedly acknowledged in private that he actually lost the election, in contrast to his public statements. And yet, as the indictment lays out, it was not illegal in and of itself for Trump to lie. That is protected speech. But it was the actions the indictment alleges that he took that were illegal, using claims of election fraud that he knew were false to try to get state officials to change electoral votes, organizing fraudulent slates of electors in 7 targeted swing states, deceiving them in many cases to sign on to the scheme, sending states' Justice Department letters falsely claiming.
See, again, I think that's really shady. It's also funny, like the idea of the president trying to trick people into being alternate electors, but is it criminal? I just I just remember there was talk of doing the same thing in 2016. You know, there were prominent liberals calling for alternate electors or something similar to vote for Clinton because of Russia. And I remember that. I remember thinking that was like one of the first early signs of Russiagate mania.
Right.
And this sounds to me like something similar, unless someone can explain the distinction.
Well, I think that I don't know if they did this exact same thing, but what I will say is that, you know, what's interesting, if I were Trump's lawyer, he'd never let this happen. But I would I would tell him to plead not guilty by reason of insanity, because and I think both Trump has obviously he has this combination of delusional and narcissistic, and then Democrats have a combination of delusional and Russophobic that makes both of them insane.
I hear that.
Yeah.
And let me say too, I thought a good remedy was impeachment, because this was to me a political act, and so impeachment is a political remedy. And I thought that was appropriate. Trump acted in a reckless way, you know, totally unbecoming of a president. And I thought impeaching him was a form of censure that was fair. I just don't know if this is criminal. I hope people get that distinction.
Well, because you can't tell a bunch of people like to go to the State House and sign a fake document claiming that they're electors when they're not. That's the criminal part.
Maybe you can. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you can. That could fall under free speech to me. Well,
that's another thing that people are getting like. Well, okay. So a couple things. One is, we'll get into that soon. But every like conspiracy to commit a crime includes speech, because that's how we communicate with people. So it's not like if you say to someone, go tell that person that you're go take this dead person's ID and go vote. It's free speech for me to say that, but it's also criminal.
Is it? Okay. Well, I guess the question it comes down to is, was whatever Trump was doing there with the alternate electors, does that classify as criminal? And I'm just not convinced. But again, hey,
all right,
this is
okay.
Luckily, we'll be hearing about this issue every single week for the next whatever.
Exactly. We should have a guest on. Actually, this makes me think. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so there'll be plenty of time to talk about it, and because there's no other issues going on in the world that are worthy of our attention.
Of course, yeah.
That there were concerns about a specific state's election outcome, pressuring Vice President Pence to use his ceremonial role to fraudulently alter the election results instead of simply certifying them. And even after an angry crowd violently attacked the Capitol, he still tried to persuade members of Congress to prevent certification. In many ways, the predicate was set here on day one of the Trump administration, when the president directed his aides to insist on an easily disprovable lie about his inaugural crowd size, arguing that more people witnessed Donald Trump's inauguration than President Obama's, despite the video evidence. And a day later here on Meet the Press, the president's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, offered this awkward explanation.
You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving, Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods. So his presidency began with alternative facts.
Chuck Todd warned us, everybody. Chuck Todd warned us from the start. And this is why he's showing this clip, is because he thinks he looks great here when he called out Kellyanne Conway for talking about alternative facts. And they even edited that clip so you can really get Chuck's indignant response. And I love that. I love it when an anchor throws in a clip of themselves to look prophetic. And that's that's what Chuck Todd did here.
Right.
Yes. Chuck warned us. Why didn't we
But they
listen?
warned us, yeah.
Why didn't we listen?
Also, Aaron, they perfectly did the thing in TV shows where they flash back and the character has a different facial hair and Chuck has the goatee.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Falsehoods. So his presidency began with alternative facts and apparently ended with alternate electors. And it may all add up to a scenario where voters have to decide whether to put Trump back in the Oval Office before he is sentenced. Let's not forget that Republican senators decided not to hold the president accountable via the process that the founders believed was the better process for this, impeachment. In fact, this was Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell explaining his vote to acquit Trump after January 6th.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. We have a criminal justice system in this country. We have civil litigation. And former presidents are not immune from being accountable by either one.
So instead of doing the tough work in the Senate, they left it to the voters, who are going to be stuck with the burden of upholding the rule of law if Trump is convicted. An unprecedented test of our democracy. Prosecutors have asked the judge in the January 6th case to issue a protective order.
Isn't everything an unprecedented test of our democracy? January 6th, first of all, like the election between Trump and Biden, that was an unprecedented test of our democracy. Then January 6th was, then Trump's first indictment was everything's an unprecedented test.
Yep.
At a certain point, these tests are getting a little stale.
Of course, yeah.
Order over discovery evidence after Trump posted this on Friday on social media. If you go after me, I'm coming after you, citing Trump's habit of attacking judges, attorneys, and others associated with legal matters pending against him. And while they claimed that social media post was on something else, not on this, last night in South Carolina, Trump didn't do anything subtly. He attacked special counsel Jack Smith directly.
Deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him.
As opposed to that face right there.
I know.
That face, if you look at that face, it's a picture of health.
Very, very picture of health, exactly, yeah.
Equanimity, calm, he's centered. Unlike deranged Jack Smith.
Right. But can I just say something? I don't want to sound triggered by the comments, but there is something out there, Aaron, where you, according to some of the people in the comments, because of our disagreement, you are a Trump simp and I am a shit lib. All I did was read the indictment and think he broke the law. That does not mean I think that January 6th was an insurrection. That does not mean I don't think that the Democrats are a bunch of hypocrites. That does not mean I think that the media concentrating purely on Trump is not bad. But I just want to say that because some people can't hold two ideas in their mind at the same time. I'm the same. I have all the same views that I do about Trump, the Democrats, and the Republicans, the duopoly, the uniparty that I did last week, except I read the indictment and think that he did break the law in many matters when it comes to the election. This is not about the riot, the insurrection on January 6th. So, yeah.
Katie, when does your MSNBC show debut?
I know, right? Exactly.
I'm
ready. I'm ready.
Are they giving you like the 7 p.m. hour, or are you going to take 8 p.m.? Like, because obviously that's where you're headed with this.
I know exactly. I'm ready. I'm going to do a Peacock transition. Yeah.
There's never any nuance in the comments. That's my experience in the comment
section.
True. No nuance in the comment section.
No nuance in the comment section. Yeah.
The comment section giveth and taketh.
And taketh. Yeah.
Yes.
But an interesting thing is that a lot of people are saying with the free speech. Well, we'll wait for the free speech. We'll wait for that. Yeah.
All righty. Well, let's start our clips with, or at least our interview clips with John Lauro. He is a Trump lawyer, and he was basically everywhere. He was on every single network all day yesterday, making the round. So here he is with the Chuckster.
To respond, though, to something that seems a bit more straightforward on intent. It's the infamous phone call in Georgia. Let me play an excerpt.
The ballots are corrupt, and you're going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them, because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal. That's a criminal offense. All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
If he had proof he won the state, why did he threaten the Secretary of State with a criminal with a criminal charge?
That wasn't a threat at all. What he was asking for is for Raffensperger to get to the truth. He believed that there were in excess of 10,000 votes that were counted illegally. And what he was asking for is the Secretary of State to act appropriately and find these votes that were counted illegally. That was an hold on one second. That was an aspirational ask. He's entitled to petition even state government, but that doesn't involve an obstruction of federal.
It was just aspirational, Katie.
It is. It's
An aspirational ask.
An aspirational ask. An AA.
Yeah, exactly. Classic AA.
Federal government. But what the Biden administration has said is somehow President Trump obstructed a federal proceeding. That relates to what was going on in the states. And President Trump had every right to ask the Secretary of State, I believe that this election was conducted improperly. There are deficiencies here. I want to see if there are more than 10,000 votes or whatever the number was that were counted illegally. Once again, that's core political speech.
Bringing up a criminal violation is somehow speech. I mean, it's the way it sounds like somebody saying that's a mighty fine, it's a mighty fine restaurant you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. I mean, it's no different than, I mean, it's a vague threat here to bring up a criminal offense. Have you read the First Amendment? No, Chuck, have you read the First Amendment? I mean, political speech is the most protected speech that we have under our Constitution. It's important to go back and read the text of the First Amendment. So you can actually say that a government official is acting criminally. That's protected by the First Amendment. If we lose the First Amendment rights, then heaven forbid we lose the right to freedom of the press. We lose the right for me to appear. We lose the right for you to speak. You're not allowed to use speech. You're not allowed to use speech, though, in order to get somebody to commit a crime.
Right. I can't believe
what he was directing Raffensperger to do was to
advocate.
So you have to. No, you're saying he didn't commit a crime.
You haven't.
Also, this guy's shit-eating grin is so annoying, and it's funny. Someone put this attorney sounds like he's on Assange's side. I was thinking that too when I was hearing all the speech about the First Amendment and freedom of press and freedom of speech. It's like, yeah, that's why Trump was so aggressive with Assange, because he cares about those rights. Again, I'm not saying that because he doesn't care about those rights, his should be violated. I don't think it is a violation, but it is rich hearing these people all of a sudden talk about a free press and free speech.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's administration indicted Assange, and now they're claiming to care about free speech. It is complete hypocrisy.
Yeah,
that's true.
You haven't read the cases because, for example, you can encourage someone not to register for selective service. I could see you, Chuck, registering for Vietnam, and I can go up to you and say, Chuck, don't register for that war. It's illegal.
And I violated the law.
Keep walking. Go home. No, that's protected speech. My speech is protected.
Right.
And Chuck would say, I'm not going to register for Vietnam, but I am going to sit in my TV studio and cheerlead for it. So pretty much that's my service to the war. Yeah.
Well, let's. This is an interesting. There's a reason he brought this up. Okay, let's hold on one second.
That's the point.
You coerced me to violate the law.
I can add.
Okay, here's the funny thing: is that he's bringing up a case called Hammerschmidt, where and this is a case that the Trump defense team is trying to use. And Hammerschmidt is a Supreme Court case that determined that to conspire to defraud the United States means primarily to cheat the government out of property, but it also means to interfere with or obstruct one of its lawful governmental functions by deceit, craft, or trickery, or at least by means that are dishonest. So Hammerschmidt was about advocating not registering for the draft. And the court said that's not fraud. That's advocacy of law breaking. Okay? Does that make sense what I just said?
Mm-hmm.
So Trump's lawyers obviously just Googled like defraud government or something and decided to make this a legal case. And what's interesting, though, is that Chuck Todd is wrong here because he's saying, because the point is that this case that this lawyer is bringing up, Hammerschmidt, does not apply to what Trump did. But the principle he just brought up is true. And it's about encouraging people to dodge the draft or avoid the draft. And Chuck Todd doesn't know that. So now they're both idiots. And he'll mention Hammerschmidt again.
Ask you, No. And by the way, there's a Supreme Court case. You got to read it. Right on point, Hammerschmidt, and it says that's not illegal. You know, we can have this discussion, but people need to start looking carefully at what our country stands for, what the Constitution stands for. It applies to President Trump just like it applies to everyone else. If we eviscerate our First Amendment rights, we will no longer have a country where people can freely speak their minds.
Have you been able to find any?
Again, and if we had a real media, this is where Chuck could say, well, listen, your client's administration indicted Julian Assange.
Right, exactly.
For publishing factual information. You obliterated the First Amendment, or your client did.
Right.
But again, that's a case where Democrats and Republicans totally agree. They align.
Exactly.
So the First Amendment be damned.
First Amendment be damned, yeah. But we'll probably
get evidence. I know the campaign paid for 2 studies that didn't find any evidence that would find enough fraud to overturn the election. Have you found any evidence yet? Because you have said you plan on relitigating the 2020 election, and nobody has found any evidence to back up Donald Trump's claims, and it's been 2.5 years.
We will be litigating the 2020 election because much of that has not been litigated. But what we do know, which is not in dispute under any circumstances, is that local state election officials changed the rules in the middle of the game. They sent out absentee ballots.
And all, hang on. Look, I understand. You've said this a few times.
You asked me a question, but you're not allowing me to finish.
Mr. Lauro,
no, you're not
all of
allowing
this
me to
was
finish.
litigated.
Mr. Lauro, you're like the Biden.
No. Don't get politics with me.
You don't understand.
I've allowed you to filibuster a lot.
No.
I'm
getting legal with you.
All of this, Mr. Lauro.
Getting legal with you. You know that
Go
song,
ahead.
Getting Jiggy with It?
You're trying to create a confrontation.
You know that song, Getting Jiggy with It?
Yeah.
You should do a cover, Getting Legal with It.
Getting legal with it, yeah.
Or remember, because tonight I want to get freaky with you. Remember that song? This could be because tonight I want to get legal with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, even when we disagree, that builds some creative tension that leads to very good musical production.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where our finest musical minds have.
I know. We
So
used to do that more. Remember, we have to get back to that. And someone out there needs to make a Twitter account called Musical Useful Idiots, and we got to get like all of our covers out there.
All those songs will be #1 hits, and that Twitter account will be huge. Everybody, you're sitting on a gold mine.
Wilson, will you? That's money on the table. We're leaving right there. Wilson, will you compile these because they're so good?
Yeah, we have so many of them.
We do. You jest, but we do.
No, I'm serious. It's
you're serious. Okay, I thought you were being sarcastic. Well, not every. We used to.
I remember there was Pump Up the Demand. That
Pump
was
Up the Demand. Yeah, that was
a recessionary
Pump
related
it up.
track.
Yeah, that was a good track. Yeah.
Yes, so many hits.
Yeah, so many hits. All right.
For no reason, but go ahead.
This is. No, I don't want to, Chuck. I'm just trying to let you know that the criminal rules are different than what you're talking about. In a criminal case, the government has a burden of proof. We don't have any requirement to prove anything. All we have to do is put the government to its test. And one of the things that will be shown at trial is that there were these institutional anomalies where state election officials unlawfully broke the law, and Mr. Trump was entitled to petition government and assert that he was right. Yeah. That's part of the First Amendment protection. We don't have to prove fraud. People don't understand that. All we have to do is that President Trump was acting with his conviction that this election was conducted improperly.
Right. I just want to let viewers know that
he was a man with a conviction, with the clear conviction of his conscience. And Chuck Todd can't understand that, wants to punish him for his beliefs. Trump is just a believer. Is that a crime?
Is that a crime? Yeah.
Is it a crime? Also a great Sade song. Okay.
Everything you've said and all that, he actually went to the courts. All of this was actually deemed legal that was done in the states. All of this was, but look, we're not debating this. I got one last question for you.
False.
I need to get you to react to what your client is saying about the prosecutor. Here's what he said last night.
deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him.
Do you believe he's deranged?
I don't think that's the gotcha question that Chuck Todd thinks
I know,
it is.
right.
But anyway.
I'm in suspense, though. What do you think he's going to say?
Oh, yeah. Will he back up his client? We'll see.
Let's see.
President Biden in April of 2022 said he wanted President Trump prosecuted and he wanted him out of the race. He repeated that in November of 2022. As a result, President Biden has put in motion a political prosecution in the middle of an election season. And obviously, everything is open to politics. I'm not involved in politics. I'm just representing a client. I'm ensuring that justice is done in this case. President Trump is entitled to his day in court, and he'll get it.
Right. Do innocent
Nice
people
pivot.
attack prosecutors?
Nice pivot.
Of 2022. As a result, President Biden has put in motion a political prosecution in the middle of an election season. And obviously, everything is open to politics. I'm not involved in politics. I'm just representing a client. I'm ensuring that justice is done in this case. President Trump is entitled to his day in court, and he'll get it.
Right.
One more question from Chuck. And again, this is
Yeah.
also not the gotcha. That
Not
he
a
thinks it
gotcha,
is.
yeah.
Do innocent people attack prosecutors?
How dare someone attack a prosecutor?
So stupid, that question, yeah.
You don't attack a
How
prosecutor.
dare you? It's like
Yes.
saying, what would you you know what it's like? It's saying like, why do you care about civil liberties and privacy unless you've committed a crime? Do
Exactly.
innocent people care about civil do innocent people care about civil liberties?
Chuck can't imagine a world in which a prosecutor can be criticized.
Right. Yeah, activists like I mean, look at like Mumia Abu-Jamal, for instance. His prosecutor, his judge, that doesn't make him guilty because his legal team has pointed out that the judge wanted to fry the N-word.
How dare Mumia and
Yeah.
any other political prisoner attack their prosecutor?
Right.
Yes, that's
It's
the
such a
message.
dumb argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, someone I want to give a shout out to, one of our musical collaborators said, "Then I saw Trump's face. Now I'm a believer."
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
good one.
That-
We'll also
that's
make
what-
sure you
that's
put
really
that in
good.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, but to the lawyer's point there about how the Biden administration's been calling for Trump's prosecution for a while. I mean, that is part of the background here. We
It
can't
is.
just forget that, like, first Democrats tried to frame Trump as a Russian agent, and then when that failed, tried to use this dubious theory that he'd obstructed the investigation into the fake claim he was a Russian agent to impeach him, and that didn't work. They got him for the call to Zelensky, and they've been calling for his prosecution pretty much since the day he took office. And I think that's relevant to this background. It's not as if like all of a sudden this this call to prosecute Trump began with January 6th. It's been going on for years, and there was a dubious effort, a fake effort to frame him before with Russiagate. That's what that
Right.
was. And again, nobody was charged there with defrauding the U.S. government, even though the Clinton campaign fed the FBI fake claims like that
Right.
they
That's
paid
true,
for
right.
to frame him as a Russian asset. So I do think that's relevant background to all this.
It is. And you know what's interesting is that these elites protect each other. Like they have each other's backs, right? Like we've talked about this before. Obama didn't do anything about Bush. We tortured some folks, but it's time to look forward, not backwards. I think like Merrick Garland is a real process guy, like suck up guy. Like we don't go after political elites, but it is political in that I think, probably wouldn't have gone after him if he hadn't run for president.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And they don't like him again, not because of his policies, which they're pretty much all on
Right.
board with. Like, so for example, we're supposed to worship Congress as like the temple of democracy. Yet that same Congress stood up and gave Trump and Juan Guaido a standing ovation when Juan Guaido came in with Trump, and Trump was trying to install him as the president of Venezuela. That was a real insurrection.
Sure.
That was trying to use violence and coercion to overthrow a foreign government and install a U.S. puppet. And Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats stood up and applauded Trump's coup attempt in Venezuela. So that's why, again, it's hard for me to take all this seriously.
It's hard to take seriously the sanctity of that Democrats take the sanctity of voting seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, we have.
I think we should skip forward because we have so many good ones to get to. Let me know if you think this is okay. What if we skip forward to hold on one second. Where's the one? This is a good one that we have. Oh yeah, clip 3. We could do 3. We could just do 3B because I think we already litigated the free speech argument. Let's do 3B.
So we have more from Trump lawyer John Lauro, because again, he made the rounds and spoke everywhere. So here he is speaking to CBS News.
Change of venue. You still going to pursue a change of venue?
Absolutely. We would like a diverse venue, a diverse jury.
Do you have any expectation that will be granted?
That reflects the characteristics of the American people. It's up to the judge. I think West Virginia would be an excellent venue to try this case.
Speaking of the
close
judge,
to D.C. and a much more diverse.
He just wants a diverse venue like West Virginia that reflects the diversity of this country.
So diverse.
You know what West Virginia's diversity is? 92% white, 3.6 black, 1.47 Latino. So he just wants this melting. We are a melting pot in this country, and he wants to find a melting pot venue. And West Virginia. When I think of diversity, I think of West Virginia.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
All righty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have? Okay. Well, let's. We've heard a lot now from Trump's attorney John Lauro. So let's go to Biden's former spokesperson Jen Psaki, who hosts a show.
You know, we can skip her because she makes a point that I think is good, but we can watch it, but it's just people are going to not want to hear from her. Basically, she says that she gives a good comparison. You want to watch it? Okay, we can watch it.
No,
you don't want to watch it, right?
I'm fine to skip Jen Psaki.
Yeah. She's saying that like you can use free speech. Like if you, she gives a good analogy saying if Trump thinks that he paid too much in taxes, he can say that. But if he tells his accountant not to file it, that's the crime.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to Jamie Raskin, who helped lead the House impeachment inquiry against Trump. And he had a much friendlier chat with Chuck Todd.
A thrice indicted former president is neck and neck with the current president.
So the question there to Jamie Raskin is, why is a thrice indicted former president neck and neck with Joe Biden? The implication being like, shouldn't Biden be way in the lead right now? And let's see what Jamie Raskin has to say.
Well, it's a great question. I wish that Lincoln were around to pose it to him because it's his political party that they've dragged into the mud here. I mean, that was a pro-freedom, anti-slavery, anti-know-nothing, pro-immigration party, and now it's become a cult of authoritarian personality. And, even the candidates running against Trump dare not challenge his clear betrayals of his constitutional oath. Donald Trump knew.
So again, Jamie's not asking the question, why is he neck and neck with Biden in the polls? And that's because Biden has presided over a whole series of disasters, including the Ukraine proxy war, the economy, even though Biden fans think the American people are just insufficiently grateful for how great Biden's been. They're not seeing the benefits. So they're not really on board with him. But Raskin isn't answering that. And, he says that the Republicans are a cult of authoritarian personality. I think there's some truth there. There's a culty aspect to MAGA and Trump. But what about Democrats? They worship
Blue Anon, as you call it. Blue Anon.
I call them Blue Anon because they do the same thing. They worship, in their case, their cult leaders are national security state bureaucrats like Robert Mueller. Everyone, like, he was like their patron saint until he failed to validate the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory. And then he was thrown under the bus and called senile. Now it's Jack Smith. You have like fawning profiles of him about how he runs triathlons. They believe in conspiracy theories. They believe in censoring their opponents. And they believe in imprisoning their opponents too, as they've been talking about for years. So I think we have two ruling cults right now. And I don't think Raskin is well placed to call it the other cult when he's a leading member of one of those cults. That's my take.
Exactly what he was doing, and we had lots of testimony about that before the January 6th committee. His own White House counsel told him that he was wrong. The Attorney General of the United States, who was like the biggest sycophant of the Trump administration, said the arguments he was following were BS. And so he had to have known 60 federal and state courts rejected every argument about electoral fraud and corruption they brought forward, and still he went ahead. And even if he did believe it, as his lawyer is saying, which I don't think he did, but even if he did, it makes no difference. You might believe that your bank owes you some money. You don't have a right to go rob the bank.
And get that money back. Jamie Raskin.
Okay. Yeah. Except, again, you have the right to go and say to your bank, you owe me money.
Right. And you
rob the bank, you don't have the right to do, but you have the right to go and tell them you owe me money. And again, look, this is the debate, which we've crystallized here on the show today is what Trump did. Right. It was reckless. It was baseless, but is it criminal?
I say yes. Aaron says no. We'll get back to you. We're going to resolve it by the end of the week. Yes, he does have cancer, by the way. That's a lot of people are asking about his head, what he's wearing on his head. So he does. He's getting, I believe, chemotherapy.
Again, really, the theme song for me for this whole saga is Sade's "Is It a Crime?" Is it a crime? I'm telling you.
All right, really write that one down, Wilson. Yeah,
it's asking the question: is it a crime? I don't know.
Well, I think actually you, Aaron, think that the real Sade song for this is "Sweetest Taboo," because for you it's not a crime. It may be taboo, but it's not a crime. It's just a sweet taboo.
I'm fine to ask the question: is it a crime? I think this is one of these things where legal scholars can debate this all day, but I'm just posing the question. I'm not sure.
Is this a crime? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We got, this is good. Should we go to Mike Pence?
Yes, let's do it.
This is really good. All right. I love this clip.
This past week, but do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had come forward with the specifics that you were just talking about just now, the pressure campaign that you got from the then president, from his attorneys, and talked about that in the days after January 6th, because now he's really solidified his grip on your party and helped lead the party's view of his unconstitutional actions. A vast majority of Republican voters think he actually won in 2020. Do you wish you said what you're saying today sooner?
Well, I don't know, Dan. I've been saying this for 2 years. After leaving the White House, moving home to Indiana, I think it was on the 100th day of the Biden administration that I spoke about this issue at an event right here in New Hampshire. And as you know, I've given countless interviews. I wrote an entire book telling our story now more than a year ago. But look, I understand that the news events of this week have caused renewed.
So this is really kind of sad and almost endearing, but he's like, look, I don't know why people didn't know about this already. I wrote a whole book about it. I've been talking about it nonstop. And people, I get it. It's a new thing for lots of people. He's just admitting no one gives a shit about him or pays attention to him.
Good focus on this issue. And in some respects, I welcome it. Not because I welcome the indictment. I had hoped it hadn't come to this. I had hoped the questions about the president's conduct on January 6th had been left to the judgment of Republican primary voters and the American people. But now that this has come, I've had people coming up to me ever since that day, and in some respects telling me that they didn't know. They didn't know what we went through. They didn't know about the stand that we took.
Exactly.
And I'm very humbled by that.
So do you think if you would have said so publicly, you would have, for example, been able to influence your fellow Republicans in the Senate? If he was convicted in the impeachment trial, he wouldn't even be able to run for president.
Well, I mean, come on.
Come
on, Dan. I mean, we lived through the Russia hoax, the president being impeached for a phone call. The day after January 6th, Nancy Pelosi tried to distort the 25th Amendment to get us to remove the president, and then to go through a process of impeaching the president of the United States after he left office was just, one more effort by the Democrats. But look, I want to tell you, I trust myself to the judgment of the American people and to the judgment of history. I really do believe people see through the agenda of the Democrats, that partisan committee on Capitol Hill that I refuse to have anything to do with, spoke for itself. But at the end of the day, my one aspiration as I travel here in New Hampshire and everywhere around the country is for people to know that the oath that I took in January 2017, I kept every single day.
The indictment says that the former president told you that you're too honest after you said you didn't have the authority to reject electors. Did Donald Trump ever acknowledge to you that he lost the election?
I don't recall that he ever did. But with regard to being called too honest, Dan, I've been called worse.
This reminds me of like when you're in a job interview and they ask you, what your
worst quality is.
Worst quality. I'm too honest.
I'm too honest. I work too hard.
Yeah.
I'm too hardworking. Yeah.
Mike Pence is too honest, everybody.
Right. I do like the idea that that there are two things that I think are interesting in this clip. One is the idea that Dana Bash doesn't understand that Trump supporters wouldn't have cared. They would have stayed supportive of him. It's like example 7,500 of the media elites being incapable of understanding how Trump supporters think. And the other thing is that it's just poor Mike Pence shouting something from the rooftop and no one literally paying attention because no one listens to him. Well, guys, we're shifting gears. I'm so excited that we're going to shift gears, right? Should we go to Dean Phillips?
Okay, sure.
I think we got to do it. This is like really important. So, guys, last week we reacted to Dean Phillips. Let's show the clip from last week. Let's do a little flashback.
Earlier, you were critical of corporate TV for not acknowledging.
Wait, hold on. Let's restart from the beginning.
Katie, remember earlier you were critical of corporate TV for not acknowledging challengers to Biden, like RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson and Cornel West. Well, I hate to prove you wrong, Katie, but of course, Chuck Todd is all over Biden's new challenger on the left, who everyone knows about. Surely you've heard of Dean Phillips.
Oh my God, I can't get his name out of my head. Yeah,
everyone knows who Dean Phillips is, right? And I'd never heard of him before this. He's a member of Congress, and
Minnesota.
He's running for president, and of course, because he's not someone on the actual left,
right?
Chuck Todd Chuck Todd's allowed to acknowledge his existence.
But Dean Phillips is a pretty serious member of Congress, maybe unknown. If he's sitting there on that ballot in New Hampshire, that doesn't have you nervous?
It does.
He literally just said he's unknown, maybe unknown. That doesn't have you nervous? Why would you be nervous about someone running with zero name recognition?
But is Dean Phillips like the new kind of like fake opponent for Biden to distract from his actual opponents, like RFK Jr.
Yeah,
and
probably.
And Cornel West? Like Dean Phillips doesn't have the record that Joe Biden does.
Right.
He's like a fake foil.
So I don't mean to toot our own horns, but we were pretty prescient back then. So let's take a look at two Dean Phillips clips from this week.
Democrats are telling me that they want not a coronation.
Hold on.
Democrats are telling me that they want not a coronation, but they want a competition. The New York Times poll from this week shows 55% of Democratic voters want some alternatives to the current people in the primary. 83% of those under 30, Democrats under 30, want alternatives, and
was that accidental?
about 76% of independents. So I just want to make my case.
When are you going to decide?
I think, well, let me get to my point.
Okay.
So if we don't heed...
I've given you some room.
Yes, you have. If we don't heed that call, shame on us. And the consequences, I believe, are going to be disastrous. So my call is to those who are well-positioned, well-prepared, of good character and competency, they know who they are, to jump in, because Democrats and the country need competition. It makes everything better. That's my call to them right now.
So if they don't, you will?
I'm not saying I will. Look, I think I'm well positioned to be president of the United States.
You do?
I do not believe I'm well positioned to run for it right now. People who are should jump in because we need to meet the moment. The moment is now. That is what the country is asking.
So
if you're well positioned to be president, why can't you run now?
Well, because
What's
he's
going on, Dean?
You know why? Because literally no one knows who he is. This guy understands that better than the media trying to. I mean, this is so. What's so amazing is we kind of mocked last week. We were making fun of how unknown he was and what a non-entity he was, and the fact that Chuck Todd was trying to gas him up as if he was this huge, formidable opponent, right? And then what happens next week? Face the Nation has him on. And that's not the only part that you were prescient about, or we were prescient about. We were both prescient about that. But this next clip shows how prescient you were, Aaron. But yeah, just to summarize what he was doing there, basically, he's saying that someone else needs to run. It's just not me. And they're like, when are you gonna enter? When are you gonna join the race? And of course, it's notable that people who have entered, RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, somehow haven't been on the shows. But Dean Phillips, all it takes is one suggestion from Chuck Todd, and then he's on Face the Nation.
Yeah, so he's not even actually running.
No.
He's just flirting with running, but he gets all this top billing. And
Right.
the people who are actually running,
they don't get anything
against Biden. Nothing.
Right. And you predicted that. You said this is just another way to marginalize RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. Now
And Cornell.
And Cornell, right? And Cornell. Sorry, I keep leaving him out because they clearly will never talk about the green. But you're totally right. I'm just saying, even within the Democratic nominees, they're being total hypocrites.
So it's like they'll keep bringing him back and be like, Dean Phillips.
Dean Phillips, yeah.
You
We're
are
going to
the
go to Dean Phillips now.
There are no challengers to Biden right now. You're the only
Exactly.
possible challenge. So
and you
because
don't even know if you're going to do it.
we're
Right.
so committed to debate and diversity, we're bringing you on reluctantly, even though you're not even a challenger. But because there are no challenges, we have to talk to you.
Exactly.
We're that committed to a dissenting point of view.
Right, exactly, right. So let's see. You said that maybe he was being used to marginalize the other candidates. Let's take a look at this next clip.
F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign.
All right, we have to
Assess
rewind.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign.
Well, first of all, I like competition. I'm pleased that people.
Is he an adequate competitor?
Not the one that I'm looking for. I don't believe him to be a Democrat.
Is there
some of
something
the things,
telling
let me say this.
in what's
I
happened
care,
around him?
I think there is something telling. I think he's using a very similar playbook to a former.
These are such lead. It's fine, but they're such leading questions. Is there something telling about what's happening around him? I do think there's something telling.
President who did the same in the Republican Party just a little while ago. And I think we should be cautious of that. I also think that's why we need alternatives. I don't believe him to be a Democrat. I do believe, though, that speech is good. More speech is even better. We need alternatives for the massive majority of the middle.
It's just so funny. You don't believe someone who comes from one of the most storied political families in U.S. history, which happened to be Democrats, the Kennedys. You don't believe he's a Democrat? What constitutes a Democrat?
That would be a good follow-up, but shockingly, we're not going to hear it from this discussion.
In America,
I want to make sure
to
I
have
heard
some
that
alternatives too.
Correctly, you don't believe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a Democrat?
Not from the positions he's been taking.
Well, I mean, yes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. challenges Democrats, for example, on the Ukraine proxy war. But Dean Phillips can take heart when it comes to Israel. He's actually to the right of some Democrats these days. That's how depressing things are. That, I mean, listen to RFK Jr. talk about Israel. It's, you know, and we've covered this elsewhere. I did something with Max Blumenthal a few days ago, going through his recent appearance on the Jimmy Dore show. It's what he says about Palestine is monstrous. There's no other way to put it. It's awful. But Democrats can take heart in that because they share that position. So in that way, he's totally in line with their views.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I look forward to more Dean Phillips every single week because we can't talk about any of the other candidates who are actually polling against Biden and polling pretty well, including RFK Jr.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the recent thing was that he's at 13 and Marianne Williamson's at 10. So it's just unbelievable that they don't get, it's just crazy. I mean, I know it's not like that crazy or unpredictable. It's a little bit more blatant than I'm used to.
All right. Well, maybe we can go to Ukraine because it got some attention, or a little bit of attention, from Fox News yesterday on the state of the Ukraine counteroffensive. This is Fox News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is presenting a peace plan at a summit of more than 24 countries this weekend, with one notable absence: Russia, not invited. The talks could preview future negotiations to try to end this war. Joining us now in Kyiv with the latest on the summit and the state of Ukraine's counteroffensive, Fox News senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott with beautiful church bells going in the background. Hello, Greg.
Hey, Shannon, that's right. Church bells going on, but not too much peace here. There are those peace talks going on in Saudi Arabia this weekend, wrapping up just about now. We'll get to those in a minute, but first to the warlike actions happening here overnight. Russia.
Odd tone of voice for a war correspondent.
Yeah, it's like he's covering a wedding.
Yeah, like a wedding or a bowling match or something.
I think it was the bells that got him into the wedding mode. Like church bells are ringing.
Yeah.
Firing another wave of dozens of hypersonic and cruise missiles plus drones at various locations throughout Ukraine. Most were shot down, but some got through, including hitting what was said to be a blood bank in eastern Ukraine. Officials called the strike a war crime. This as Ukraine was busy too. A university building in Russian-held Donetsk up in flames. The unconfirmed charge is that Ukraine used controversial cluster munitions. And also after...
Okay, shout out to the Biden administration for the cluster bombs that recently gave to Ukraine.
Yeah,
I mean, if the allegation is true, that means they hit a school after Russia bombed a blood transfusion site, which also would be a war crime. Yeah, but anyway, U.S. cluster bombs apparently at work, hitting their intended targets, which in this case would be a university.
After Ukraine launched naval drones against Russian ships in the Black Sea this past week. This an apparent response to Russia's pullout from the grain deal aimed at getting food to needy countries. One of the topics of a Saudi-hosted peace summit this weekend in Jeddah. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has met with Ukrainian President Zelensky in the past. Now representatives of some 40 countries, including the U.S., China, and India, were there, but not Russia.
What we are hearing...
According to officials on the ground here, some basic principles were discussed, including the priority of international law and international rules-based order.
We anticipated that this conference will show the progress of work with the countries of the Global South. And I think the progress is there.
Russia, again, a non-attendee.
By the way, shout out to this guy for mentioning the rules-based order, because nothing says rules-based order like using cluster bombs.
Absolutely. I think that's enough of this clip. But yeah, there were these peace talks in Saudi Arabia. Russia was not invited, but China attended. China is a close ally of Russia. And I say any kind of discussions are better than nothing, even if Russia, the other belligerent in this war, wasn't invited. But again, Ukraine's demands are that all Russian forces leave its territory. I think it's a tough sell because the opportunity to end this peacefully has, it's been made a lot more difficult by the policy of rejecting the previous tentative agreement back in April 2022, when there was a tentative peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, but according to multiple accounts, the US and UK blocked it. And so I think now any kind of negotiation is that much more difficult, but we'll see. I do think the fact that people are meeting, at least talking about it, is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of today's show.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for joining us. Remember to like the stream by hitting the like button, and also go to usefulidiots.substack.com or usefulidiots.locals.com to support the show, help keep us going, and get bonus content. And we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Bye.
I'm not doing a call-in after this. I'm going to do a call-in again next week. Yeah. Just so people aren't.